God damn it. I'll be damned if I let some boring graffiti-writing, soul-sucking son of a bitch in an oversized cowboy hat and boots take my friends' souls and shit them down the visitor's toilet.
Bubba Ho-Tep is a comedy horror film released by Vitagraph Films on June 9th, 2002. Based on the John R. Lansdale novella of the same name, the film was written and directed by Don Coscarelli. It stars Bruce Campbell, Ozzie Davis, Ella Joyce, Heidi Marnhout, and Bob Ivy. On paper, the concept of this movie sounds more like a hallucination from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas than an idea with any semblance of human thought. An elderly Elvis partnered with an elderly black JFK fighting an ancient mummy in a nursing home sounds like something even a kindergartner would raise an eyebrow to. Never mind an executive at a film studio. Yet despite the unadulterated lunacy of the concept, it was not only made into a film, but was one that gained a sizable cult following in the years after its release. But for being so inherently ridiculous, you can't help but ask, where does the appeal of this film lie? How does it convince people to love it so? In this review, we're aiming to turn off our brain once again in order to have the best chance of enduring whatever fantastical things this film may have to throw at us.
Just as a warning to those of you who haven't seen this movie yet, there are major spoilers ahead. If you wish to see this movie for yourself, without having anything spoiled for you, please click off the video now. Now, without further ado, let's get into it.
The story begins at the Shady Rest Nursing Home in Mud Creek, Texas. Here we meet an aged Elvis Presley who we learn swapped identities with a look-alike impersonator named Sebastian Haff. Having grown tired of the fame he made for himself, Elvis made the switch as a means of getting a fresh start, trying to feel the thrill for life that had long since left him. But after an accident with his hip renders him effectively immobile, he is interred in the nursing home. He lives out the last of his days, physically ailed and full of regret for never being there for his wife and daughter, who never knew what really happened to him. The only friend Elvis seems to have in this home is a senile man called Jack, who claims that he is John F. Kennedy, having somehow survived his assassination attempt and been dyed black in order to keep the truth under wraps. The nursing home is soon struck by an entity from beyond the grave, who is revealed to its victims as an ancient mummy sporting cowboy attire. During the night, Elvis is attacked by a massive insect that is the harbinger of the mummy's arrival to its victims. Elvis is able to stab the creature with a fork and roast it on an electrical heater. When Elvis tries to find someone to help, he comes across Jack, sprawled out on the floor unmoving. Elvis is able to wake him up, only to listen to him babble about how Lyndon B. Johnson sent someone to finish him off. Though the next few days are uneventful, Elvis gets a visit from Jack, who wants to show him something in the common bathroom. In one of the stalls, there are hieroglyphs carved into the wall. Jack tells Elvis that he attempted to translate it after finding it, and that his supposed LBJ assassin from last night was actually some evil spectral being that tried to take his soul. The two men return to Jack's room to keep digging, trying to understand what exactly is going on. They come to the conclusion that there is a mummy haunting this place, and they speculate that it takes the souls of the nursing home residents because they are easy prey and provide a near constant food supply. They also guess that he was in the bathroom because he had to take a crap, leading them to conclude that when a soul is taken by this mummy, it has no chance of making it to the afterlife. It is simply digested, dissolved down into nothing. The mummy then appears in the hallway outside Jack's room, looking straight into the eyes of Elvis. Elvis gets a glimpse at the history of the mummy, how it was murdered by its own people, and how it ended up in the United States. Having been chased by a toy gun-toting elder known as Kemosabe, and now having been seen by Elvis and Jack, the mummy departs, but Kemosabe ends up dying from a ruptured heart as the mummy leaves. Elvis and Jack are questioned about Kemosabe's death, but both lie about what happened, Later on, Elvis goes down to the nearby creek where he finds a license plate from a crashed bus, the same one from the bus carrying the mummy in his vision. After talking to Jack, who had done some further research, they learned that the mummy had been on loan from the Egyptian government, but was stolen by some thieves with a bus. Before the thieves can get very far, though, the worst storm in East Texas history blows through, sending the bus careening into the creek next to the nursing home. Elvis and Jack resolve to take matters into their own hands. They will face the mummy and kill it if they can. Come nighttime, the two equip themselves with a handheld pump filled with rubbing alcohol and gasoline. They head out into the front yard of the home, where they face the mummy. The mummy takes down Jack, and is about to steal his soul when Elvis shows up with the pump, spraying the mummy with its flammable contents before setting it on fire. While the mummy is incapacitated, Elvis goes to help Jack, but nothing can be done. Jack dies, leaving Elvis to take down the mummy alone. Using a wheelchair and the pump, Elvis runs into the recovering mummy, dousing him again before the two take a fall down the hill to the creek. Elvis is wounded in the fall, and the mummy begins to beat him. Elvis is able to throw the mummy off balance just long enough to set him on fire once again. The souls of the mummy's victims are freed as the mummy finally burns away into a charred husk. In the final moments of the movie, Elvis lays dying, but he faces the end knowing his soul is still his, and the folks of the nursing home are safe. As Elvis slips away, the stars in the night sky align into a hieroglyph telling Elvis that all is well. Finally at peace, Elvis closes his eyes and slips away. Okay, I'm not gonna bother beating around the bush here. This movie's goddamn awesome. And not even in a so bad it's good kind of way. It's genuinely surprising just how well done it actually is. No matter how insane or delusional the concept of the movie sounds, the whole thing just works no matter what direction it seems to go. The thing that makes this movie stand out and stand taller than the rest of its schlock-fueled competition is how deep it gets with its themes. While on the surface, the nursing home setting sounds like a story beat inserted to hammer home how ridiculous the premise is, it's actually critical to establishing the key aspects of the movie. Themes of mortality and legacy are at the core of everything this movie has to say. Elvis is constantly plagued with thoughts about how he got to be where he is, the regrets for things he should have done differently, and the reality that sooner now than later, the time he has on Earth will run out. These looming thoughts are compounded by the cultural perception towards the elderly being negative. The residents are viewed either with disdain or indifference, as the care staff are just going through the motions of keeping them comfortable. Elvis is alone, always just out of arm's reach of being able to forge relationships with those who simply view him as a walking, talking mass, with his only real friend being just as compromised as he is. He's left only to wonder if everything he did had been worth it, and how he will be leaving so much unfinished. The atmosphere of this movie is very well fleshed out courtesy of the thematic elements. The elders in this nursing home are alone against the undead entity because the only people that might be able to help them are not only unaware of the threat, but likely wouldn't care if they did know. The dark truth is that the nursing home is the last stop. The residents are gonna die there whether there's a mummy or not, making it that much easier for the mummy to fly under the radar. The mummy is not only powerful, but intelligent, revealing itself only when it needs to. The threat becomes that much more terrifying knowing it lies in wait, but not knowing if or where it will show up. And with the elderly having an inherent physical and mental disadvantage, They are easily preyed upon far more than someone who would be comfortable with. It's also worth saying that the concept of your soul being reduced to nothing when consumed, taking away any chance at reaching the hereafter, is more terrifying and disturbing than every horror movie remake from the last 10 to 20 years combined. But even with its gut-wrenching horror, the movie is just as skilled at knowing when to ease up, using the tired and emotionally disinterested state of the seniors as the groundwork for its bizarre humor. The dialogue strikes a near-perfect balance, shifting between its investigative elements, its existential dread, and its I'm done with any and all the shit humor, flowing between each other and blending together naturally. Though it will probably be a bit crude for people in the places where Elvis talks about how he can't hit home runs anymore, those bits of dialogue also happen to give a more personal feeling to watching Elvis's physical state deteriorate. There's a lot of focus on little things like thinking about lunch and going to the bathroom, and a lot of memories of how things went wrong and what could have been done right, because memories and little things are all Elvis has left to think about. Even his interactions with Jack are usually built around either going to the bathroom or what kind of snacks they're going to eat while they study. This is probably best portrayed in the scene where, after telling a visitor and a nurse to F off, they laugh at him, leaving him to grumble about how he can't even swear at people anymore without them treating it like a joke. This all goes a long way in making you appreciate just what these two men have to work with going up against a goddamn mummy, and how they need to make the most of it. Bruce Campbell's performance proves to us that with the right actor, nothing is too far-fetched. Beyond nailing the voice, and of course being hilarious putting on the tired, grumpy demeanor of an elderly man, his reflections on his life, and how at the end he's no more immune to death than everyone else in the home, really tugs at your heartstrings. His resolve to finally stand up and do what's right at the end, even when it ends up costing him his life, is not only oddly powerful, but also heartbreaking, as he doesn't hold back in either his emotional moments or the haunting narratives that guide us through his thought process. Ossie Davis, apparently an actor who did Broadway, really gives old Elvis someone to bounce off. Elvis's description of Jack being quote-unquote certifiable is the most apt way to describe Jack throughout the movie. Yet the absolute lunacy of a black man claiming to be secretly survived JFK not only helps to ground Elvis, but it also gives him more to think about, as there are a lot of parallels between his story and Jack's. Ossie Davis is not only excellent in guiding the research with his surprisingly astute observations and speculations, but is astonishing as an actor, if for no other reason than he was able to say a mummy tried to suck his soul out through his asshole with a straight face. His contributions to the humor of this movie are the ones that make sure you pay attention to what's happening, while at the same time making sure you and the characters are not taking it too seriously. There's also a running gag with the Hertz driver and loader who come to pick up the deceased, where the driver speculates about the mortality of man, while mindlessly manhandling the stretcher into the back of the car, and in one case, falling over a balcony with one like something out of a cartoon. The dark humor that comes with this is not only a nice way to break up the main story, but also reminds us how the elderly really are on their own with this undead John Wayne wannabe. The setting of the nursing home is perfectly shot to portray the story. The rooms that look like white-walled boxes, the dimly lit hallways, and the yellowing wallpaper that looks like it belongs in a museum give off the aura that this is a place you don't want to be, and not just because of the spook lurking within its walls. The themes of being cast aside when you age are almost personified with how ugly and run down this place appears. This is not a place that anyone would choose to live, and the fact that the elderly are brought here really hammers home the idea that they've essentially been discarded and are being kept here with no recourse until the last of their days are over. The movie also has some pretty good visual work. The scenes of people coming in and out of Elvis's room being blurred and sped up, the hieroglyphs that emerge from the mummy's mouth when it speaks, and the stars aligning at the end of the movie are all very well done, and add style and emotional weight to the scenes they appear in. Couple that with a surprisingly poignant soundtrack, and you have a package deal that hits 2.5 of your 5 senses in all the right ways. The sound effects used in the fight scene are super cheap and cheesy ones that you've heard in every other cartoon in history, helping to remind us that in spite of the profound messages and performances this movie has to share, this is still in fact a movie about old Elvis Presley and old black JFK fighting a mummy dressed like a cowboy. The costume design for the mummy is in much the same vein. While the face design is undoubtedly terrifying to look at, you can tell it's a pretty cheap costume and a ridiculous one given his desire to fit in? I don't know what else you would call an Egyptian mummy wearing a cowboy hat in Texas. But they're able to balance that out with the humor of this movie, when he utters some conveniently subtitled ancient Egyptian telling Elvis to eat the dog dick of Anubis. So still a good time all around. The only real complaint to be had would be with the makeup used to age up Bruce Campbell to look elderly. It's somehow more convincing in some scenes than others, with most of the scenes in bed just looking like a 40-something man dolled up to look twice his age. Bruce is able to offset this with his physical acting, though, really convincingly portraying the stiff and limited movement of someone in their elder years. That said, though, the aging makeup is still very much not able to keep up with the snail's pace of Bruce's physical movements. The final rating for this journey through the ages is 9 out of 10. It absolutely crushes its cheesy premise courtesy of the weight of life and its infinite troubles. Its themes of life and how it inevitably ends are perfectly framed with incredible acting, cinematography, and dialogue that perfectly balances the serious with the laughable. This is a movie that blows it right out of the water, and because of that, it belongs on any watch list, anytime, anywhere. Be warned though, we're still waiting on that sequel they promise you in the credits. Just saying.
And that will be it for today. Thank you all for stopping by. If for whatever reason you enjoyed what you saw today, consider sticking around, maybe leaving a like or subscribing if you wish. And if you have any recommendations for movies you want to see reviewed in the future, be sure to drop those down in the comments. There's plenty more to come, so if that's something you care about, I'll see you when I see you.